お待たせしました。皆様拍手でお迎えください。黒沢清監督です。ありがとうございます。これつけられますか？後で。はい。本日はですね、プレスの方以外、この時間は、撮影は禁止となります。後ほどフォトセッションの時間がございますので、そこまでちょっとお待ちくださいませ。モデレーターは私、関口優子、そして英語同時通訳は今井美穂子さん、そして海老名紫音さん、お二人にお願いしたいと思います。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
Okay, let's begin our conversation, and we would like to start off with a few questions, I suppose. Thank you. So, Mr. Kurosawa,
監督ご自身も映画祭にはずいぶん前から参加され、
been a long time participant and guest at the Tokyo International Film Festival and other festivals. Recently, you went to Busan International Film Festival, and you also had a masterclass there as well, I understand. Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Kurosawa. I am a lot older than all of you here, and I've been making films since those days in which we used to make films on film. It was quite a different style of filmmaking back then. But if my experience proves useful to any of you who have a dream to become a filmmaker or would like to be involved in filmmaking, that would make me indeed very, very happy. Busan International Film Festival, people often come to me to hold these master classes, but there seem to be many people who have seen my past films, and it is these people to whom I talk or answer to their questions about my past filmmaking. That seems to be often the case. Today, I presume that there are many people who are already active as filmmakers or who aspire to be filmmakers. So today I would like to share my experience overall as a filmmaker and not perhaps talk about each individual film or specific film. I think this might be a rare occasion. And film festivals and international film festivals, I think, is a great platform to hold these kind of conversations. If it were not for international film festivals like these, I would not have the opportunity to speak to all of you, I think. Film festivals for filmmakers are indeed a very valuable platform, I think. Because more than anything, it is a great place to meet people, meet other filmmakers, meet producers, or meet young aspiring, or for us to meet young aspiring filmmakers like yourselves. And so for me, film festivals for me as well are indeed a very invaluable opportunity. This is what I always think. Thank you very much. What was the first film festival that you participated in? Do you remember? It depends on how you define first participation, but the very first experience that I had with an international film festival was the Yubari Fantastic Film Festival. That was many, many years ago. It was an international film festival back then. I entered my film, the Japanese title is Jigoku no Keibin, to transliterate it, The Watchman from Hell. And Robert
で審査員の
Wise
中にドミニク・サンダー
was a jury member. Dominic Sander was also a jury member. It was, Japan was enjoying their bubble economy, so they were able to bring such wonderful guests and high-profile guests like that back then.
ドミニク・サンダーさん、私も
Dominic
多分
Sander.
その時にお会いしてちょっと前
I
だった
remember
記憶があります
meeting him as well. I was very
最
nervous.
初に参加したその海外の
The
映画
very
祭
first
は
overseas film
オランダの
festival,
ロ
I
ッテルダム
think,
映画
was
祭だと思います
the Rotterdam Film Festival
Cure.
in the Netherlands,
Cure.
and that was with Cure, yes.
その時に、参加した時に、
When you
Q&A
participated
に出るか出ないか
in
問
these
題があったかと思うんです
festivals, there was discussion as to whether you were going to participate in
監督に
Q&A
とってその
sessions.
Q&A って何なのかなという。はい
How do you
はい
feel about Q&A sessions
そう
yourself?
昔の
Well,
懐かしい思い出話だと思って聞いていただければいいんで
if
す
you
けど、
can
生
listen
ま
to
れ
this
て
as
初めて
a
ロッテル
past
ダム
story
映
or
画
a
祭
memorable story of mine. So
1998
in the
年かな
Rotterdam Film Festival I went to in 1998, I
で
remember, I
その
believe.
時ですから
And
僕はうちの妻と2人だけで行ったんで
it was
すけ
just
ど
my
も
wife and me who participated,
何
who
やる
went
かも、キ
to
ュアという映画が
Rotterdam.
招待されて、
We were
大変
invited
嬉しい
because of Cure,
ことだ
so
と
we
いう
brought
こと
Cure
で
to that film festival, and we were very
ご報告に行ったわけで
excited.
す
We
け
were
ども
very happy to be able to participate, I
行
remember.
っていろいろ、
And
英語でい
so
ろいろ
we
いきなり
went
聞かれたりして、
there.
それ
It was
で
quite
非
an
常に
experience to be
手こずったとい
bombarded
う
with
のがあり
all
ます
of
が、
these English questions. I remember being very
急
surprised by that.
挨拶、上映前の挨拶をするか
And we
って、
talked about whether we
聞かれました。
were. I was asked whether I wanted to do any opening remarks before screening our film.
本当の本心を言うとそんなも
And
のしたくない。
quite truthfully, I did not want to make any
映画を
opening
ただ
remarks.
見せればいいだけで、
I would be
映画を
happy.
見せ
It
る
would
前
have.
に何
I
か
would have been
挨
happy
拶
to
する
just
という
be
ことを
able
僕は知らなかったの
to
で、
show my film,
いや
and I
じゃ
wasn't.
あ
I wasn't
本
aware
当は
that
した
they
く
had
ない
such a
と
custom,
思ってたん
so
ですけど、
I very
どうし
reluctantly
よう
had
っ
to do this.
て言いよどんでいると、その
I
聞いてき
remember
た人
saying,
が
I don't know if I want to do this,
ど
but
ちらでもいいが、一つアドバイ
the
スすれ
festival
ば、
staff said
多分した方がいい
that
だ
it
ろう。
would be advisable to make some remarks before your screening. And I said, okay, in that case, I shall do it.
挨拶することになったっていう、本当に
So
映画祭のシステムって全然知らなかったんですけ
I
ども、
was that
今
unfamiliar
は
with the system or with what they do, what the protocol was with international film
上映前に
festivals.
一言挨拶、あるいは終わった後
Now I know
Q&A
that
とか
that
で
is
すね。
part of
そういうの
protocol.
が
I
自
know
動
that
的に
opening remarks and
組み込まれてい
Q&As
たり、
are part of the protocol or what they
Q&A
do
だ
at
けだったり、
international
い
film
ろいろあるんで
festivals.
すけど、
But sometimes
あの
it's just
当時
opening
は
remarks,
それや
sometimes
るや
it's
ら
just
な
a
い
Q&A
Q&A も含めて、
session.
監督の自由だったんです
It
ね。
was really,
ただ
back in
自
the
由
early
だ
days,
か
it
ら
was
とい
really
っ
up to
て、
the
じゃあや
filmmaker.
りませんっていうのはなんとなく
But I
向こうは
didn't,
やりませんという監督がまずいない。
but there are
やりたいってい
probably
う
no
監督が
filmmakers
監督がや
who
りた
don't
いに
want to
違い
make
ないっ
any
ていう前
remarks,
提
and
で
everybody
それでも
probably
やるかや
presumes
らない
that
かは
directors
監
do
督
want to
の
make their statements.
判断なので
It
どっち
is,
ですかと聞いてくるという
however,
映画祭
down
って
to the
面倒く
director,
さい
so
システ
they
ムだな
will
って
ask
すご
us
く
whether
思
or
った
what we
記憶
want
があ
to
ります。
do, and I thought how so cumbersome international
受け
film
止める
festivals can be.
監督の話を聞かせていただく立場として考
As
える
people
と
who listen to your talks
最初の
and
挨
your
拶は
speeches, I
本当
mean
に
the opening remarks.
ご覧いただく前なので、多
As an
分あまりなんか
audience
多くのこと
member,
は話せな
I
いと思
mean,
うん
we
です
don't
けれども、
expect you to say
終わった
that
後は
much, but after
やっ
the
ぱり
audience
監
members have
督がい
seen the
て、
film,
そのセッ
it's
ションできる
great
場があ
to
る
be able to engage in a session with
ものす
the
ごく
person who made
理解
the
度も
film
深まる
because
し
it、deepens our understanding of that film.
まあ、
And
監
also
督という方が何を思ってこういうふうに作っているのかとい
We
うこ
want
と
to
を
know
多分答え合わせしたいなと
the
思
director
う。
was thinking, what kind of thoughts went behind the filmmaking.
そうですね。
Yes,
それはよくわかります。
I perfectly understand that. But that
映
said,
画を撮ったすでに撮った経験がある方
and
が
then
およそ
I believe that you can understand this
あの
if you have directed a film in the past. But when it comes to a
全
director,
て 100%
the directors
コントロールしているわけではない。
are not controlling the
下手したら
film
半
100%.
分もコントロールしてい
Maybe
ない
we only control it we only control it by 50%. The screenplay could be written by a different person, or the actors could improvise and make up their own lines. Or if I may elaborate, you do a location shooting, and then you thought that it was going to be sunny, but it could rain, and it has nothing to do with what you control as a director, but you have to sort of embrace all of these elements, and then that's how a film is made. And once it's complete, you show it to the audience, and at that moment, director will be, for all of the elements of that film, the director will be responsible for all of the elements related to that film, and then you have to sort of take on that stance. You will be accountable. And of course, some of the directors may say, well, I don't know why that happened. The actor did that on their own, or, we had unexpected rain. So I guess it's perfectly all right for you to answer it that way. But what they want to hear from you is why the film is composed that way. Not what the director was actually thinking. And then the person who they need to go to is the director, because the director is a representative figure of the film. Even though you may not have written the screenplay, you have to be in the position to explain the screenplay. So the director's scope of work changes. I feel that way. Once the film is complete. So this is not about you, director, but I had a privilege of participating in different film festivals, and what I have felt was that the directors will go up on stage, and then they will participate in the Q&A sessions, and in the beginning, they usually don't know how to answer these questions. You can see from their facial expressions that they're getting unexpected questions, but as they gain experience participating in those Q&A sessions, you will be able to have a better understanding, if you will, of the film. And then as you accumulate that knowledge, I feel like the film sort of like culminates into something higher. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that from you as a director. Because we're always extremely nervous receiving questions, and we will be like, I didn't expect this question to come from the audience, because sometimes during filming you had no control over that, but you still get questions about that, and then so you will create your answer on the spot as if you knew about it from before, and then you just kind of improvise your way through, but it's not a lie. So when they ask that question to you, maybe this was something you didn't think of before, but that could be the truth. But when it comes to the films, it's not the creation of the director only. And sometimes you can discover new things by receiving these questions from the audience. So I'm always nervous to answer the questions from the audience. Okay, so let's talk about the competition category. You mentioned that you participated in the Yubari International Film Festival, and then you received the award. And then was it, I believe that it was Cannes International Film Festival that you joined officially in an international film festival for the competition category? Yes, I think it was Akarui Mirai. The Bright Future. Actually, the first one was Cure. I participated for the first time in an international film festival through TIFF, Tokyo Film Festival, but when it comes to overseas film festival, yes, it was Cannes with Bright Future. And then what you said during that time was that you enjoyed it a lot. So in the competition category, I don't know how to put this in words, but to be recognized so much as a director and being there where other participants and audience embrace you as a director and welcome you as a director, you felt very happy. You mentioned that. Oh, did I? So, going back to what I was saying, just to build on what I was saying, we will be treated as a representative person of that film. So when you participate in a film festival, they really, welcome you so warmly, and because you are at the most senior level, senior position of that film. Yes, you have to go through a lot of struggles as a director, but you are brought into such a glamorous situation in international film festivals, and then when you release a film in Japan and when you do the promotion in Japan, of course this depends on the film, but in Japan, in many cases, it's the main actor who has that glamour, and then they're usually treated as the central figure, and the director just kind of goes along with that person, with that actor. But when you're participating in a film festival, yes, the main actors may come along with you, but it's more of the director that has interviews from the morning to the night, from the night until the night, and then the main character, the actor who played the main character, only has a couple of interviews, and they have a great time at the film festival, and I'm jealous. Yes, so I guess that's the beauty of film festivals, and for those aspiring directors, I feel like it's quite valuable that they participate in different film festivals. So let's talk about the process of your creation. First of all, for you, Director Kurosawa, how do you do the ideation of a film? So in the beginning, I think you had original ideas, and then you shot films based on these ideas that you already had. But when you do the ideation and the planning, and then when you turn it into a film, that's one thing. And then how is that going to be different when you have start with an idea of someone else? So the planning and the ideation part is important, but it's a very intangible concept to grasp for a film. What does that mean? And I think it's quite difficult for someone to be able to conceptualize that accurately. But no matter what sort of film it is, whether it's a commercial film or a small film, I think it's the same. So when you think about how a film starts, there are two elements, and then these two elements get combined, and then that's going to be the starting point of a film. And what are those two elements? One is basically, I think it basically comes from the director most of the time. There's this passion to make a film. It could be the passion of the producer or the screenplayer or the main actor, but in many cases, it's the director that has this passion, this desire to create a film. And then you can't do this alone, so you need to share this desire with many staff and the stakeholders that bring the fund to you, and other stakeholders. And then when all these desires converge, and then it doesn't mean that you can make a film right away when they converge, but I believe that that's where the film starts.
こういう映画撮りたいなって欲望が先に来る場合もあります。それは健全かもしれません。でもこういう映画撮りたいってんでいろんな人に、どうだろうかといろんなそれを実現できるように企画書を書いたりプレゼンしたり。
From there, you start to draft the plots and you start with the financing and you start to get together, band together with members who will join the project. Sometimes people will come to you with a certain original work and they want you to direct it or adapt it into a film. And at that point, you already see to a certain degree who the producers will be, how many producers will be. This is often the case with commercial films. But it all comes down to whether you want to embark upon that project. If ideas spring within your head as to, if I approach the filmmaking in this way, then that would make for an interesting film and so forth. If you think that there is indeed a way in and I do want to embark upon this project, and if you're able to share that sentiment with your counterparts, then that development will move forward, I think. But there are many cases, of course, various cases, but I think it is often the case when your own desires do not match with how it is communicated or other people's thought processes or sentiments. But I think that is actually what is most interesting about filmmaking. What I mean is this. And if you've had any experience as filmmakers yourself, you would understand this. But for example, you think that you want to make a certain type of film and you try to communicate that to people. And everybody says, or somebody says, oh, that sounds like a good idea. That could be the producer, that could be a certain actor that's interested in the project. And so, but does that mean that the actor will 100% agree with what you want to do? And that's not often the case, actually. Sometimes an actor who is very passionate about a role will have his or her own plans, and he or she wants to bring that up to you. And sometimes that is not what the director was thinking. But since this actor or actress is very popular and the project has moved forward with that, and sometimes the director is a little bit left behind, this project starts to develop in the direction that the director himself had not foreseen. And from there you have it's a negotiation, and all the same, it is quite a different project from what you imagined. Sometimes the producer will come to you midway through the project and say, actually, we don't have enough of budget, so you have to cut down costs in this respect and so forth. Now, this is something that often happens as well. So as you share your ideas, the shape of that project will often change. For example, if there's an original work that people agree on in the adaptation, and you may think that, well, if I'm going to adapt this into a film, I want it to do in this way or that way. You will have all these ideas and you want to proceed with the project with your ideas, but sometimes the original writer will not agree with you. Or sometimes it doesn't have to be the original writer. The producer might say that if you're going to adapt this into a film, we want you to keep this part. But the director may think that, well, that was not what was interesting about the original work. I wanted to work on this part instead. Oh, but I have to listen to my producer and so forth. So you have to remold your desires sometimes or often when you are working on an adaptation like that. In my case,
こういう時をどうやって突破していくのか。
how do I jump over these hurdles? Well,
まあ監督なら監督の
it all comes down to
的教養だと思います。
how much
教養って言うと大げさかもしれない。
literacy that person has in cinema. How much films have you seen? How much films have fascinated you? Have you been interested in thus far?
自分はこんな映画やりたい。
If there's a certain way in which you want to make a film, for example, if you want to be a director like Steven Spielberg, for example, one such aspiring filmmaker might think this, but the producers or will say to you, we can't pay for the SFX, or we can't pay for this scale, so you have to do it this way or that way, or let's make it a home drama. And if you have film literacy, you can perhaps pivot and say, well, okay, let's do an Ozu-type film instead. If you don't have film literacy, that idea might not spring up in your head. So it's very important literacy because it helps you shapeshift along the way. You might start from a certain point and find yourself in a very different point, but still be satisfied because you see the possibilities that this project can afford you. If you have seen films, if you have literacy in cinema, I think it's very important. If you have only one type of film that you like, then your desires in a project will leave you frustrated when a project doesn't end up in a place that you hadn't envisioned in the first place, and the completion of the film might not be quite as good as you had wanted. So, you were talking about cinema literacy and experience and the importance of that. I really do understand what you're saying here. You have to have so many ideas and certain ways in which you compose scenes or shoot scenes. But that all comes down to how wide your knowledge of film is. It is indeed an indispensable talent, isn't it? Yes, it's something that's very important to me. Of course, I don't think I can limit this to film literacy. I'm a film fan myself, so I tend to talk in this way, but your interests don't have to be limited to film. You can be interested in various people, various figures, various societal issues, various pieces of literature, for example. Or your interest can be in paintings, in art. It's all in the end, it's how much you've been able to accumulate in terms of interest and knowledge. And when you have that, when you've accumulated, then, for example, if somebody comes to you with a certain societal issue that they want to feature, then you have so much in your arsenal that you can throw into that project, that you can find yourself able to work with. Okay, going on into another topic. No matter if it is a project that was brought to you or it was a project that you started yourself, once it begins as a film project, what is the most important aspect, important ingredient for it to actually be green-lighted? What gets a film project going? Yeah, I wouldn't have so much trouble as a filmmaker if I knew the answer to this question, but in the case of Japan, I think
映画のスタート
The inception of a film project, well, with the Japanese production, it's usually whether the protagonist, the main actor or actress is cast. But before that,
I think you can imagine this already, but the script needs to be complete first. And then you look at the script and then think, okay, with this script, and we can also look into the size of the budget, and then you can also, revisit your desire as well. And you can also see if other stakeholders are interested, if the producer show interest, or
っていうのが第一段階だと思います。それでも俳優が決まらないと最終的なゴーサインは出ないっていうのが現実。
I don't think you can get a green light of the project unless you decide on the lead actor. So, the desires of the stakeholders, your desire, you have to reveal that, but it's only after the lead actor is decided that it gets a green light. And then director, what are the things that you always do in the beginning of the project? Is there anything that you do when the project kicks off to make it beneficial to the film? Well, so when the shooting preparation starts, what to do is really up to the director. So there's really nothing that you must do or that you don't have to do. There's really no set rules. For me, though, what's most important is the location hunting, meaning where to shoot. I need to decide that. And in the screenplay, it's only in the form of words or letters, but when you have the actual location right in front of your eyes, then you can start to imagine, okay, so this must happen in this very setting, in this very environment. You'll be able to imagine it more clearly. So in that sense, the location is important. And of course, if you have a big budget, and then if every single thing could be made with a set, then it's a different story. But for the type of films that I direct, in most cases, we can't have an elaborate set, so we need to find a location. So finding that location is, for me, the most important factor, at least for me. This depends, though. Some directors may ask the assistant director to find the location, and they're not very proactive in participating in location huntings, and that's their style. And I believe that this is a joy of movie buffs. When I watch your films, the composition, the mise-en-scène, and the scenery have a certain meaning, and it sort of supports the foundation of the narrative. It gives depth to the story, and then finding that in your film is quite interesting. That's how I feel when I watch your films. Right. So you earnestly go and find that place, and then you go to the place and think, oh, okay, this place seems to be interesting, and it's quite an intuitive feeling that you get. I can't really describe what sort of feeling that is I get when I'm in front of the right location, but when I find that place, I get this urge to want to film that place. And then in the actual shooting, there's going to be actors, and then they act in that environment. And in the background, you see the location, you see that place. For me, having that in the frame is very important. So, and this is just me. It doesn't mean that this is indispensable in filmmaking, so that's one caveat for you to bear in mind. So let's say that there is this place, and then when you look at it from a certain angle, it could be interesting. And then when you tilt your head and then shoot it from 90 degrees angle, it could be interesting as well. And then you ask your actor to walk from that position A to position B, and then that way you will be able to shoot that place from two angles. So I sometimes give that sort of a direction, meaning the place sort of informs the movement of the actors. So actors may also find interest in that place. I think that'll make it even more enticing, right? Yes, the actors usually have experience in different locations, in different places to shoot. So if they're veterans, they're quite flexible in their acting, and naturally, when it's shot in a studio, then that's one thing. But let's say that it's in an eerie house, or it's in an eerie forest, or in the mountainside, and then they will look around and think, what is this place? So I believe that one way or another, they will be impacted by the place that they're in when they act. So if the location is interesting from this angle and another angle as well, then naturally the actors will start to move in a natural way so that we can capture both angles. So if we try to do this in a studio setting, it could turn out to be unnatural, but when you do this in a real place, there could be absolutely no problem with their movements. So you have an inorganic place and natural place or organic place. And then I believe that in many cases you portray the contrast of inorganic place and organic place. Is this something that you come up with when you do location hunting? Well, that all depends on the film. So the place being completely inorganic or the place being completely organic probably doesn't exist. It's kind of a mixture usually. So it may look inorganic, but when you look out the window, you may be able to see a forest. Or it can look like a vast nature, but you see a very awkward-looking steel pole, and it's quite undescribable how I choose the location, but having various elements in the background of the actor, not just one single thing, but you may have something organic and natural, and then you can also have the urban setting, and then the countryside, the rural setting, and you may have something most advanced or something that's already ruined. So I want to see a mixture of different elements in the background. For pre-production, I believe that you do table read and you decide on the casting and you also decide on the costumes. I believe that you go through all these steps. Which one do you think do you focus on most? Maybe there's no one thing, but may I ask you that? So, just to repeat myself, there is no set rules. So, it's really up to the director
to
freely decide what they want to do. But for example, for me, table read and rehearsals before the shoot, I don't do that. I mean, if I'm dealing with an actor or actress who has absolutely no experience whatsoever in acting, I may do a little bit of it, but I usually don't do that. And what I am not good at most is the costume fitting time. And what's interesting about that is that in Japan, the deciding of the costumes, basically the actors will wear different options of the costumes, and then the staff will gather and then have discussion whether that's the optimum costume or not, and then make a decision on that.
I really don't like this process, to be honest. I think whatever works and whatever the actress, the cast members like should do fine. Specialists are in charge of the costume design and costume fitting, so I really want to leave it to the pros, but everybody asks the director for the go sign or the green light. That's what happens in Japan, but in France, it's a very, very different, and it was very easy to work in France. Because with the costume fitting, the director doesn't get involved with that process. It is a process just between the costume designer and the cast members, and they discuss while looking at photographs, and they try to, the costume people try to, or the cast members will try to present to you what they want to wear. Well, the costume designers or the costume team and the cast members will present this to you together. And all I have to do is, okay, looks good. So they take all the initiative in doing that while I'm location hunting, for example. Sometimes the crew will come to me with a photo and they'll say, so the actor wants to wear this and so forth, and all I have to do is just agree with them. I don't want to be the director to be in the costume fitting process and say yes or no. That's just so cumbersome. I think it's easier for the cast members as well to be able to be flexible with their time without the director being involved in every step. It's just a lot more fun, therefore, working in France. A long time ago, in the way back when, I don't think that costume fitting was done in the way it is done right now in Japan. Yeah, I'm trying to remember how things used to be done in Japan, but I don't remember the costume fitting process being so cumbersome or being such a big deal in the early days. But right now, nowadays, the reason why it's become such a cumbersome process in Japan or on Japanese productions, I think it's because the schedule of the stars, their schedule are very, very tight. So you have to set a certain date where you can do the costume fitting. And you have to come to a definitive decision on that day. Or you reschedule it for the next day if it doesn't come, if you can't come to a conclusion, for example. This goes with other departments as well. For example, if you want to change a piece of dialogue in a certain scene, or you want to photograph stills during the production, you really have to be meticulous with the scheduling, and I think that's why Japanese productions are so cumbersome nowadays. I see. You were talking about French or filmmaking in France. Mr. Kurosawa, you have done quite a few films or 2 films in France before. And you've also worked on what we could call international co-productions, or you've shot overseas at least. So can you talk about international collaboration? Are there any points that we should be careful about? Can you give us any pointers? Well, when it comes to filmmaking in France, 2 French films. These were complete international films or French films. It was a very valuable experience, a rare and valuable experience for me. And with Japanese films as well, I would have foreign or international financiers sometimes. And recently this has become more and more a frequent occasion. And it's very hard to draw the line between, well, at which point can we start to call this an international production? It's a very hard line, difficult line to draw, but drawing from my own experience or speaking from my own experience in the case of France, there is a bit of a difference in the system of filmmaking, but in comparison to Japan, but the cast and crew are there to support what the filmmaker wants to do. They take upon it as their task, the professionals there. I mean, the same can be said about Japan, but it was very easy to do filmmaking or to make films in France. Of course, there is the language barrier because I do not speak French, but I had an interpreter with me. And speaking from my experience, it would do you good as a filmmaker to accept the way things are done in a certain region or country and just delve into that experience. It's not such a difficult thing to do once you accept the different ways or the different approaches in doing things. What is complicated what it is when it is a half international production, for example, half of the cast and crew are Japanese and half of the cast and crew are, for example, French. And it's hard to choose to do things if it is a mix. Sometimes you will get yourself into a bit of trouble because the cultural differences do clash sometimes, and they do cause disputes and arguments. And you don't want to get yourself in that kind of situation. It would do you no good. So if you are going to embark in a certain region, unless you're going to do a production in France with 100% Japanese casts and crew, having a mix of international and Japanese, that's the hardest thing to do. When you did Daguerreotype and when you did Serpent's Path, you shot both of these films in France, but in both cases, you had a French cinematographer working with you, right? It is often the case that you have a Japanese cinematographer and you take that cinematographer overseas to film. That seems to be often the case, but you yourself do that. Would you say that of your case? Well, the crew, the lighting technicians, the prop managers, and the cinematographers were all wonderful in France. But there is a certain rule, actually. When you're shooting in France, because you get certain grants from the French government, there are rules about these grants. when you are doing a French production, in order to get these grants, it has to be a French production. So now, what is a French production? There's a point system to define this. The screenplay writer, if the screenplay writer and director is Japanese, then that is all the Japanese that you can have involved in that production. You've used up all your points, so to speak. So you can't have a Japanese cinematographer, or if you have a Japanese cinematographer and Japanese cast, then you won't get those grants. So you have to work within certain limitations. But once you do this, you come to realize that, for example, just having the cinematographer being only Japanese, that's a very difficult mix to work with. So speaking of the casting, with Serpent's Path, you had Japanese actors and actresses, but you had Mathieu Amalric. He was also in daguerreotype, both in daguerreotype and Serpent's Path, but I think he was probably a very important cast member. Well, to speak of Mathieu, well, I've been good friends with him, and I asked him to star in both of these films, and he said, "Okay, I'll do it." It was as simple as that. So it was. I was very, very thankful to him. And 非常に気さくな方なので、こんなのを撮るんだけど出てくれないって言うといいよっていうようなノリなんですが、フランスだと実に偉い方なんですよね。And then, so I had a privilege of seeing him several times in my personal time as well. But he's actually a very senior person in France as an actor. And then, if it's not a special project, he usually doesn't appear. And then I casually reached out to him, and then he decided to say yes. まあその辺も And also that's the thing about French actors. I believe that they decide to appear in films that they want to appear in, and then for others they will say no, and then they take a long rest, take a long break. So they're very free, and then they lead a very comfortable acting life. When it comes to Japanese actors, though, they belong to an agency, so maybe they're not keen on doing a project, but their agency says do this, and then they have to do it reluctantly sometimes. And then let's say that I reach out to an actor, but the actor says, well, you need to speak to my agent first, and they need to give us a green light first. I believe that there are pros and cons to this. And they're all the same when you interact with them on the set. But when it comes to the casting, I believe that the process is quite different between Japan and France. So based on what I heard, the daguerreotype, on the day that the shooting finished, the staff, the shooting was done outside, and then all the staff were there, and then they brought in food, and then they also brought in fireworks, and then the moment you completed the shooting, had a big party. Yes, they're really nice people to work with, and then we finished the last shot at night, and I didn't know about this at all, but we were shooting in the countryside, and I said cut, and I said, okay, this is a wrap. And then all of a sudden the pyro went off, and I thought, okay, so what's going on? It's actually
team, our production team, who decided to do the pyro, and then everybody was just exhilarated. And then there was food, champagne. We had a blast, and it was just a really wonderful team to work with. So maybe this is not the case for all of the teams, but the staff and then that shooting sort of all contributed to making that ambience, you think? I hope to think so, yes. And then in Japan as well, when you complete the shooting, you get canned beer, and then you give a toast. Sometimes you do that in Japan as well, but well,
やっぱりいろいろ撮影そのものはなかなか
the shooting itself,
精神的に肉体的に大変なことも
mentally and physically could wear you down, but still you are able to. I hope that our staff are able to have really valuable, experience during those days, and then when they can have a great time shooting, then I think they'll be eager to have that, party. But, that may not be the case for all of the projects. Some people would hate to look back at some of the projects that they participated. It all depends on different elements and reasons for people to feel that way. So there's no one solution to create a wonderful team. But actors and staff feeling that it was a great project to work with, I believe that that's the responsibility of the director. It's really up to the director to be able to create that sort of a team, and then that shouldn't be, I don't think that should be the ultimate goal, because the ultimate goal is to create an interesting film, so how it ends may not have anything to do with that. But I hope that the staff and the actors feel great when they finish the shooting. So, I go an extra mile to create that environment. So for you, director, whether you shoot outside of Japan or in Japan, your stance remains the same? Yes. In principle, yes. Nothing changes for me. And then just to give another example from France again, it was perfectly right that I didn't change. And then the French stakeholders and the staff were not perplexed by my comments. And then when I do the shooting of the footage, then, people will be convinced about what I wanted to do. So no matter where you shoot your film and no matter how much budget you may have, sometimes it doesn't go successfully. It sometimes doesn't go smoothly, and the existence or the role of the producer for a director, maybe you can just give us a generic view on this. So what do you expect from a producer? Well, producers for me are very important. I don't know how to put this in words, but I think this is very normal, but a producer will be with you and they will accompany you all the way throughout your journey, from the initiation of the project and all the way to the end. And the end, by that I mean, participating in film festivals and the release of the film. So it's only the producer who will be with you every step of the way of that journey. So this is, I would call my producer my mate, my comrade who knows everything and who gets you. And then behind the producer, I believe that there are many different people. You may have the fundraiser or the company people, or nowadays there is the production committee people as well. So there is just a number of other people who were willing to work on this project. And so the producer will be in between the director and all of these people, and I don't know how to put this in words, but the people behind the producer and then the organizations behind the producer. Of course, if it's something positive, then I get all of those positive comments through the producer. But if it's something negative, in some cases, the producer may be stopping those comments from coming into me. I think that's one big thing that a producer does for us. And then that relationship of trust between the director and the producer is essential. And then I could go to the producer and think, I think something's happening here, but the producer says, no, don't worry about it. You can just, continue to do the thing that you're doing. And then I'll be like, okay, I'll just go with my plan. And then I can get a sense of reassurance from them to move my project forward. And then I, fortunately, were able to work with producers that I could trust. So I believe that I was fortunate, but in some cases, the producer does not really serve as the wall to stop negative comments from coming into to the director. And then in some cases, the producer just conveys all kinds of messages to the director. They could come to you and say, oh, sorry, but we don't have enough budget.
So what happens in those cases is the director has to be the protector of everybody else. And if they'll come to you and say, well, you were supposed to have a larger budget, but you're the one who has to say, no, actually, the such and such is the limit. But the cast and crew are already doing what they do. But for example, if the producer in that case, the director has to call the shots, or the director has to protect his castmates and crewmates so that they can go about business as usual. Sometimes that's the director's task when the producer doesn't protect you. Sometimes the director can't even play that part. And sometimes the director will say to cast and crew, they cut down the budget, so you're going to have to do it in such and such a way. Then the staff, the crew, and cast will have a sleepless night. It will be quite a stressful production, and this actually often happens. I've heard a lot of stories. But in my case, I seem to be very fortunate because my producer really does a good job of protecting me. My producers are good negotiators. So that even from the development, so that we can proceed forward with what we had envisioned from the development process. I think being a producer is a hard job in that respect. So, another question. When you have a faltering relationship with your producer, what do you do as a director? Well, This does happen on rare occasions. But in my case, as I said before, when I have a faltering, when my relationship doesn't go so well with the producer, I will take upon the challenge of protecting my casting crewmates so they are not inconvenienced that much. It really comes down to me as a director then. And I feel a lot of responsibility over the production in such a case. Of course, you cannot be 100% perfect, but you try to do as much as possible so that nothing goes wrong on set. Because you have these long-standing relationships with your producers, if the producer is someone of not good character, he will not have longevity in the industry anyway, so. But there are a lot of good-hearted producers who have to give in to pressure, and they are not strong enough to stand against that pressure, and they come to you. But I think it's important to try to pull them towards your side so that they will be your supporters. You have to be on the same sidelines as your producer, I think, so that the production goes smoothly, and it's all about going back to that initial idea that you came up with or agreed upon during the development process, and how do you bring that to fruition through good collaboration with your producer. So this is all the time that we have for our talk session, because we do have to open it up to the floor in a bit, but allow me to ask maybe one or two more questions. So, as a director, your relationship with your films, the question is, where do you draw the line as to where the director's job finishes? For example, how much do you do in post-production? How much do you do in terms of promotion of the film? Where do you see your job as the director in these departments or in these junctures in bringing the film to the audiences? Well, once the film is completed, I think the director has to start wearing a different mask, that being the representative of that film. It is a different responsibility that he has to take upon. In terms of the making of the film, I mean, it's, as I said before, it's not just the director alone, and also it depends on the director, the style of that filmmaking depends on each director. There are no rock-solid rules. Depending on what the director is interested in, what process the director is interested in, the production will be very different. Sometimes a director will be very meticulous in one area, and some other directors will not care about that area at all, for example. For example, in terms of, there are directors who are very meticulous in their direction when they're working with their actors. Some directors do many takes and a lot of rehearsal sessions. And I think that is the style of that particular filmmaker. But I don't want you to misunderstand. Directing the actor's acting is not necessarily something that the director has to do. It is something that a director will take initiative to do. Because I myself am not interested in the costumes, I will just let the costume staff or the costume department take care care of that. I am to a degree interested in directing my actors' acting, and so I leave a lot of it to the actors' decisions. But, for example, I am very interested in where we set the location, how we set up the shots in terms of the camera work. And this is a very famous director, of course, Akira Kurosawa. You probably know him. But Mr. Kurosawa, and this is a well-known tale, but he tried to shoot a certain cut. And he would not say okay, and that was because he was waiting for the perfect cloud to appear in the sky. So he was very, very interested in the weather. It didn't matter what kind of acting the actor was doing right in front of the camera. He was looking at the cloud in the far backdrop. And that is the type of director that will take most time to shoot a film. But if you're Kurosawa Akira, you can be meticulous like that about the weather. You can wait for the wind to blow, for example. I mean, that is just one example of a certain director, how a certain director might proceed with his filmmaking. But there are various other examples as well. In other cases, something like this might happen. Some directors storyboard each and every shot, and they talk to the cinematographers using that. Or some directors will just leave everything up to the cinematographer, and that director might be very meticulous about the acting, for example. Some directors are more interested in the acting than the visuals. I mean, that is one way to go about it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, particularly. But on the set, I forgot what the question was. Oh, how do you define the job of a director was the question. Yes, I think it really depends on what you are interested in as a director. And you have to know what you're not interested in or what you should leave up to the professionals that are working around you. There is a middle point that you can draw, I think. Sometimes you can be a little bit interested in some things. It's all a gradation. But that is the characteristic of each filmmaker, and that will seep into the end result of the film. It will also define the atmosphere on set as well.
So that's something that you can think of, meaning you can be very meticulous about the things that you're interested in, and if there are some areas that you're not too interested in, then you can leave it up to the professionals. And I believe that that is the work of the director. So, based on what I heard, the direction to the actors, and so you don't have to be too detailed in your direction. And a very long time ago, when you shot Katteni Shiagare, I believe that you said you don't have to act the character. You can just turn it into something that is close to your personality. And then when I watched the daguerreotype, you said that, I believe that there was a line that said, try to imprint your life onto the silver plate. I think that was the line that symbolizes how you see acting. Acting, I'm not really sure how to put my fingers on that. Because for me, it doesn't mean that any acting will do. So there is a certain level of directions I give to the actors, but when it comes to details, I don't know how to put this in words, but I feel that actors should be able to act
俳優ご本人とは全然違う
without straining themselves. I mean, there's always going to be something strenuous about what they do because the very act of acting is strenuous, but you have to hide that struggle. And then I want them to do this, to be able to do this in a nonchalant way. I think that will be the best. So I'm not going to ask actors to be a different person. I don't know what that means exactly, to be that person or to be a different person. I mean, there's no way you can be a different person. I mean, is that even possible? So it's more about understanding that character and then find something that you may have in common with that character. And then that's the type of actors I want to work with most. And then I don't want actors to approach me and say, how can I be a different person? I don't know. I'm not wishing. I'm not asking them to be a different person. So I know that it could be difficult, but I want you to, find lines or situations that you can relate to. That's what I say to the actors. Thank you.